Good evening and welcome to On Assignment. This month we bring the program to you from Washington, D.C., the location of recent discussions to try to end almost half a century of distrust and hostility between America and its near neighbor, the communist island of Cuba. Since the Cuban leader Fidel Castro handed power to his brother Raúl, there's been a sort of Cuban thaw. A huge shift now offers hope to thousands of families separated by Cuban and American restrictive travel and trade policies that some feel have held Cuba back. Robert Moore traveled to the island to speak to people to find out what a change in relations would mean.
Cuba is an island of contradictions. Yes, there is an immense sense of national pride. But there is also knowledge that life is lived in the shadows of isolation, of economic deprivation, and most painfully, of families still divided between those who fled the revolution and those who stayed, and who are still dealing with its consequences. The Cuba of today was forged out of a tumultuous history of colonization and conflict. Corruption and dictatorship preceded the revolution of 1959 that turned this Caribbean archipelago into a communist nation.
If at any time the communist buildup in Cuba were to endanger or interfere with our security in any way, then this country will do whatever must be done to protect its own security.
Cuba became a high-stakes battleground between the superpowers. A Cold War furnace that at one point took the world to the very brink of Armageddon. Today, it is a very different story. The younger Castro brother Raúl is at the helm. And finally, America and Cuba are on the brink of an historic reconciliation. And economic change feels imminent.
I was very, very happy. That was a present of Christmas for me.
One woman who captures this new sense of optimism is Nidialis Acosta, who runs a business repairing the classic American cars that are one of the most distinctive features of Cuba. They remain a symbol of a nation caught in a time warp, people forced to cling to the old because of a US trade embargo imposed half a century ago. A policy that has caused significant hardship. Nidialis now has the prospect of being able to import spare parts from America and of starting a private business outside of state control. From now on, she tells me, it will be very different, with lots of improvements for Cuban entrepreneurs like me, but also for everyone else. Reform from within and a new opening with America is a tantalizing combination. Certainly Havana has much to gain from the new diplomatic movement. To spend any time in this city, with its culture of dance and music, is to see a creative, literate people yearning to join the 21st century. This is a land where the mobile phone is a luxury, where the internet is a privilege controlled by the state, where people of all generations still debate face-to-face, not online. But what about elsewhere in Cuba? For 80% of people live outside of the capital. To find out what ordinary Cubans make of this deal, I've come out here west of Havana to the hill country and tobacco farms. And I have a very simple question. I want to know what the rural poor and the farm workers, those for whom this revolution was fought, whether they welcome these developments. Do they see it as just another twist in the tortuous relationship between America and Cuba? Or do they believe it will change this island and their lives forever? The three-generation Vasquez family have a sense of keen anticipation, thrilled that the momentum is building towards ending the economic blockade they've endured all their lives.
Bueno, esperamos que cuando entren en el negocio sea beneficiable para ellos y para nosotros. Eso es lo que hace falta. Eso es lo que hace falta en el mundo, comprendernos y que haya negocio y no haya guerra.
The young boys have dreams too.
Cuando yo sea grande, quiero ser tractorista.
Even of one day traveling to lands they've heard so much about.
Venezuela, Estados Unidos, Inglaterra.
And what would you imagine that America actually looks like?
Dos tractores. Dos tractores bien
A
grandes.
country of tractors, very big tractors, Leandro replies. The great passion in Cuba is baseball. It is the sport the revolution has endorsed, and is played out in faded stadiums and on almost every street corner. Here, the debate is whether normalization would mean the top players leaving Cuba for the US in pursuit of fame and wealth. Chiara Gonzalez is a local sports reporter. She dreams of a Cuba that may soon enjoy an open economy, and she lists what she wants to see the most.
Una Cuba con internet, una Cuba con las tiendas llenas de cosas, una Cuba con precios asequibles y salarios que valgan o sea, que verdaderamente respondan a lo que la gente está, que se correspondan con lo que la gente está trabajando.
But probe beneath the surface, and almost every family here has a darker story to tell. This island, defiant and resilient though it is, also suffers from an open wound. For hundreds of thousands of Cubans have fled the communist regime, making the perilous journey 90 miles over the Florida Straits to America. It is an exodus that has divided families and caused untold anguish.
Bueno, eso es lo más grande que hay, lo más triste. No quiero hablar mucho porque me da ganas de llorar.
Irene is 89 years old, and for much of her life she has endured an enforced separation from those she loves the most. Her son and two granddaughters fled Cuba for Miami, but with another son still in Havana, she opted to stay, now reduced to living in a world of memories and old photographs.
Yo pienso en ellos todo el tiempo, todo el tiempo. Yo me acuesto pensando en ellos, me levanto pensando en ellos y el día entero pensando en ellos. Y días que me paso el día llorando. Porque yo hablar de ellos. No quiero llorar así más allá que aquí, pero para mí es lo más grande del mundo.
The granddaughter she has hardly known is Yene Ramos, living in Florida. We showed her our interview with the grandmother she misses so much.
I don't want to see my people suffering. You see, I don't want to see my grandmother living in a situation that she lived.
Yene is part of a large, million-strong Cuban-American diaspora living in Florida, many of whom have a loathing for the regime in their homeland.
I hate them a lot for all the suffering that they have caused to all the Cubans. Not only my family, many Cubans that I know, they have lost their children in the middle of the sea. Many Cubans that they couldn't come back to Cuba to see her mother after they die, not even to go to the funeral. Could you believe that? How can you be so selfish and how can you be so bad person to do that to your own country?
Undoubtedly a revolutionary dictatorship, one-party rule, and US sanctions all combined to exact a huge cost on Cuba, creating a tragic, multi-generational rift. But those who have stayed still manage to have rich lives. not in material terms, but by treasuring friendships and embracing a vibrant culture that politics cannot touch.
Bien, nosotros estamos conscientes de la hostilidad.
This man tells me it's places like this where, amid the difficulty, friendship allows us to feel good. This is how we've endured the situation over 50 years. For Irene, so missing her family over the horizon, and for her granddaughter 90 miles away and thinking of her homeland, change is welcome. It is half a century too late, but at least, unmistakably, it is coming.